Mina Aissatou Smile Sise, and today we can you building with a go na Ministry of Information and Communication concerning the press briefing where Ministry of Information and Communication can get every Thursday. Now we dey go inside the conference room outside the press briefing can take place.
As usual, let's start this press briefing with individual silent prayers. Amen. Amen. Let me take this opportunity to welcome you to the Ministry of Information and Communications. This is our usual Thursday National Press Briefing, where we look at emerging issues around the country that we need clarifications or relevant answers to. And today we're going to host the Ministry of Mines and Mineral Resources and also NCRA, that is the National Civil Registration Authority. On this note, I'll now invite the Deputy Minister of Information and Communications for the update and introduction of our speakers for today.
Good afternoon to our guests from the Ministry of Mines and Mineral Resources and of course to the National Civil Registration Authority. Good afternoon to you, our esteemed colleagues from the media. I see we have quite a big group here and very senior colleagues, in this press conference, which tells me that the issues that we are to discuss today are very, very important, which is why we're able to move people like Mr. Massacoy, Mr. Kelvin Lewis, and a host of other senior colleagues. Welcome to the Ministry of Information and welcome to this press conference. As always, we start with the updates for the week. And I'll start with a very first update. Sierra Leone members of the Female Parliamentary Caucus have met with His Excellency President Dr. Julius Maada to present recommendations from their visits to parliaments in the Eastern African countries of Kenya and Rwanda. Presenting the report on their benchmarking exercise at State House, President of the Female Parliamentary Caucus, Honorable Veronica Kadisise, said the recommendations were a product of the relentless efforts of the caucus to support President Bio's 2018 elections manifesto to the women of Sierra Leone. In his response, President Bio said he was pleased to see women taking the bold steps to champion issues relating to their welfare. He said he was particularly concerned with women's issues because women play important roles in nation building, adding that it would be a lip service to talk about development without including women, considering the facts that they constitute the majority of the country's population. The Ministry of Youth Affairs has officially launched the review process of the National Youth Policy and Youth Act, respectively, which seeks to advocate for young people's interests, youth rights in democratic governance frameworks and their components. The event took place at the Ministry of Information and Communications conference room here in this room, actually, on Monday, the 5th of August, 2019. The Deputy Minister of Justice, Umaru Napoleon Koma, is among representatives from over 70 countries at this year's UN Convention on International Settlements resulting from mediation in Singapore. The gathering, dubbed the Singapore Convention, aims to discuss ways of settling cross-border commercial disputes and stabilize trade relationship among member countries. The convention itself was signed by 46 UN member countries, including the United States of America and China. It is expected that the convention will create a global framework that will give businesses and countries greater confidence to settle international disputes through mediation rather than resorting to court. Over 900 Sierra Leonean pilgrims safely arrived in the Holy Land of Mecca to perform this year's Hajj. Led by the Minister of Social Welfare, Gender and Children's Affairs, Bendu Dasama, and members of the Hajj Committee, this year's Hajj program was again hitch-free, as all pilgrims arrived safely in Saudi Arabia to to perform this all-important pillar of Islam. It could be recalled that the government of Sierra Leone, through the Office of the Vice President, set up a fully funded Hajj Secretariat that was responsible for processing all Hajj-related documents for all intended pilgrims. The pilgrims are expected back in Sierra Leone in the first week of September 2019. Still on updates, the Ministry of Transport and Aviation, in collaboration with the Sierra Leone Road Safety Authority, today met with stakeholders at a one-day workshop to discuss issues of others on the review of the National Road Safety Strategic Plan. The event brought together state and non-state actors in the transport sector. That's all for update for this week. And today we have in our midst the Director General of the National Civil Registration Authority. And tomorrow, actually, they will be having the launching of the CRVS and ID Management Comprehensive Country Assessment Report and the CRVS and ID Management Strategic Plan 2019 to 2023 on the theme Birth Certificates for All, Fundamental for Protection Human Rights and Promoting Inclusion. The first conference of African ministers responsible for civil registration, held in 2010 in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, marked the beginning of a coordinated and an integrated effort towards CRVS improvement in Africa. Since then, successive conferences of ministers have been held every 2 years, signifying the high-level political commitment by African countries. So, like I mentioned, this is happening tomorrow at the Mattai Conference Hall at 9 o'clock, and it will be graced by His Excellency the President, Dr. Julius Mattai. Also in our midst, we have a team from the Ministry of Mines. Of course, there have been reports out there, through the media. The Ministry of Mines temporarily suspended the licenses of SL Mining Company and cancelled the operations of the Tonkolele Iron Ore Shandong. As a result, a lot has been said on this issue, a lot is still being said, but we have representatives from the ministry who are going to answer to all the questions and all the concerns that you may have. But first and foremost, I'd like to invite to this podium the Director General of the National Civil Registration Authority, Mr. Masakoy, to come and give us what's going to happen tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Minister of Information and Communication, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. We are here together with a prominent African working in the United Nations in the person of Mr. Oliver J.M. Chinganya. Mr. Chinganya is the Director for Africa Center for Statistics, an officer in charge of Technology, Climate Change and Natural Resources Management Division in the United Nations. UNECA hosts the Secretariat for CRVS and Identity Management in Africa. He is here to join us commemorate the CRVS Day and the official launch of our country assessment report and the strategic plan on Sierra Leone. Ladies and gentlemen, the statement I'm reading is on the commemoration of the CRVS Day and the report we are launching tomorrow, as well as the strategic plan. Sierra Leone will join other African governments and member states to commemorate the second Africa CRVS Day with the theme Birth Certificates for All, Fundamental for Protecting Human Rights and Promoting Inclusion. Civil registration and data statistics system is essential for modern administrative system and good governance, protecting human rights and creating inclusive society. It increases the credibility of national and local administrators and enhances their capacity to deliver social services by helping to identify what services are needed, where, and by whom. The Global Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development Goals is rooted in universal rights and inclusive development, driven by the key principle of leaving no one behind. Emphasis on inclusive development of SDGs is embodied in Target 16.9 that provides legal identity for all, including birth registration by 2030. This has been recognized by the African Union Agenda 2063, the Africa we want, which echoes inclusiveness as a prerequisite to the continent's growth and development. A well-functioning civil registration system is also a major source of continuous and reliable vital statistics and population data at local level. It is important for effective implementation of universal and inclusive development and for monitoring of progress towards national and international development targets, such as the SDGs and Agenda 2063. Collecting and disseminating real-time cause of death information as part of continuous death registration process can help to measure many of health-related targets of the SDGs. Madam Minister, the fourth conference of ministers held in December 2017 in Nouakchott, Mauritania, declared August 10 to be Africa's Civil Registration and Vital Statistics Day and advised African Union member states to observe the day. The AU Executive Council, during their 32nd session, endorsed the recommendations set out in the Ministerial Declaration. The first Africa CRVS Day was observed by African countries on the 10th of August 2018, under the theme Promoting Innovative Universal Civil Registration and Vital Statistics for Good Governance and Better Lives. The demand for registration services remains weak because many people have no adequate awareness about the importance of civil registration for them and their families and the implications that this has for improving access to core government services. Africa's CRVS Day, observed every year on the 10th of August, helps to improve public awareness of the importance of making everyone visible in Africa through universal birth registration and certification. The second CRVS Day, being this year, August 2019, will be commemorated by all African countries under the theme Birth Certificates for All, fundamental for protecting human rights and promoting inclusion. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, universal birth registration provides every child with a birth certificate, an essential legal document required to secure basic human rights to name, identity, and nationality. Birth certificate is a basic legal document for securing recognition of individuals before the law and safeguarding their human rights and access to basic social services. In Africa, more than half of the children are not registered at birth, which renders most of the regions poor, unseen, uncounted, and excluded, and by extension affects their ability to enjoy universal human rights. A birth certificate as a legal document and proof of age helps to prevent violations of rights of a child, including child marriage, trafficking, child labor, and the use of child soldiers, particularly among vulnerable and marginalized populations. Birth certificate also facilitates access to school, health services, and social protection benefits, which reduces vulnerability of children to poverty and risk of exploitation. Legal identity is a fundamental human right, as referenced in several international human rights instruments and conventions. The right of all individuals to be recognized as a person before the law, stated in Article 6 of the Universal Declaration on Human Rights. The right to be registered immediately after birth with a name and the right to acquire a nationality pursuant to Article 7 of the Convention on the Rights of the Child is an example of a human right that derives directly from civil registration. Similarly, Article 6 of the Africa Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child provides that every child must be registered at birth and has a right to name and a nationality. For Sierra Leone, our civil registration laws provide for the systematic recording and characteristics of vital events that includes birth, death, causes of death, marriages, divorces, adoption, nullities, etc. As a country, we can fulfill our dream of achieving Agenda 2063, the Africa we want, if we know who we are, where we live, work, and what we need to improve our living conditions. This will therefore mean registering every vital event and related statistics are collected, compiled, produced, and disseminated in a regular and consistent manner. To guide policy and planning, inform decision-making processes, and track progress to ensure transparency and mutual accountability towards achieving Africa and Sierra Leone's development agenda in particular. Madam Minister, it is no doubt that efficient civil registration and identity management systems in Africa contribute towards improved systems of governance, improved capacity for individuals to claim their human and civil rights, a better information base for governments to deliver services, and improved capacities for monitoring human development efforts and agenda. This makes investment in CRVS agenda not only timely, but a strategic need for the continent, hence our resolve to conduct a comprehensive CRVS and ID management assessment, followed by the development of a costed 5-year strategic plan that we have successfully completed and shall be formally launched tomorrow, August 9, as part of the CRVS commemoration, to guide where we want to go and how to go there. The process of the assessment was consultative and participatory, involving key MDAs and development partners collaborating with the CRVS initiative in Sierra Leone. The findings and revelations are spectacular, with realistic recommendations to mitigate and address the weaknesses, challenges, and gaps discerned in the implementation, management, and coordination of an integrated CRVS and ID management system in Sierra Leone. In our case, as a country, the government of Sierra Leone recognizes the need for an integrated CRVS and identity management system to form an integral part of the regular and routine governance system of the country. This recognition is demonstrated by the dedicated commitment of His Excellency, the President, towards improving CRVS and ID management systems with the provision of resources complemented by our development partners to support the initiative. With continued support, the government of Sierra Leone, through the NCRA and other relevant CRVS stakeholders, will continue to work on the modernization of national legal frameworks, improve ICT and digital identity management infrastructures, and innovative business process improvements to make CRVS systems responsive to public demands in Sierra Leone and beyond, in order to ensure that no one is invisible and marginalized, which, if not done, may limit access of many to socio-economic benefits of the country. In conclusion, civil registration systems remain the ideal source of population data in view of their outstanding attributes of permanence, continuity, universality, and compulsoriness, as it is cost-effective, reliable, and sustainable. Investment in this system is both timely for the era of the 2030 agenda and for the good governance age as prioritized by Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. I thank you all for your attention. With your permission, Madam Chair, Madam Minister, we want to ask our special guest, Mr. Oliver Chinganya, to make a few statements.
Honorable Deputy Minister of Information and Communication, the senior leaders of government that are in here, the media and colleagues that are in here, may I just say all protocols observed. I just want to give a bit of facts in terms of figures why it's important for us to have the civil registration rolled out together with the ID management, and in particular the strategy that is going to be rolled out tomorrow. Globally, we're talking about 1 billion people being invisible, in other words, not being seen, because there's no information, there's no record for them. Half of that number are in Africa. That you have people that have come on earth, they have lived, they've exited, or they've died, there's no information, there's no trace about them, and half of those are in Africa. We also have a situation where half of the young children, our children, half of the population on the continent, they're not registered. There's no information for them. So the question is that, well, how can the government, our governments, be able to plan for these invisible people, for no information that is not available for them, to be able to tell where they are, what they need, or what they do throughout their lifetime process, or cycle, so to speak. And I think this is the reason why this strategy is being rolled out tomorrow, is to see how we can account for those people that are said to be unseen or invisible. How can we address the issue of this kind of invisibility of these, the ones that are not seen on the continent or even in our own countries? That is very critical. And I think the only way to do it is that to have an integrated system. A civil registration, as the Director General has just said, is a continuous process that requires collecting of information of a life cycle of an individual from the time one is born, goes into school, leaves the school, begins to look after, looking for employment. Issues of inclusion are taken care of. You can only do that if there's an item, there's an ID or a mechanism of providing that particular services to the countries. So it's very, very critical, particularly if we are talking about responding to the SDGs, the Agenda 2030, as well as the Africa we want. About 1/3 of the SDGs targets actually can be accounted through the civil registration and vital statistics. So already, if the vital statistics, the civil registration and vital statistics is undertaken properly, adequately taken properly, it means you have already responded to 1/3 of the SDGs. That's actually what it actually means. So basically, I just want to call upon, given that we have this good way from His Excellency the President, the whole leadership of the government, that again, we need to provide the necessary support to ensure that everyone is registered, but not just registered for the sake of being registered. There are benefits out of the registration, because then you allow the government to be able to plan adequately, because they know where you are, what is needed, and what age categories are we talking about, what kind of services are required. And also, on the part of those that are being registered, is part of responding to human rights, because birth certificate is a fundamental right that should be provided at birth. And this is why this time around, in terms of celebrating for the second Civil Registration Day, we have coined this theme which talks about birth certificate for all, a fundamental for protecting human rights, but also for promoting of social inclusion. And that's very, very critical. For us at ECA, just to speak about us ourselves at ECA, we are committed, and we've been committed in preparation of the strategy and all the work on the civil registration on the continent for the last, in Sierra Leone, for the last couple of years, and we want to continue to doing so. Working with other partners, we realize that we cannot do it on our own. So we will have to call on other partners to join us. This morning we had a meeting with the UNSTC. This is the UN country teams. You could see the enthusiasm that is coming from the UN country teams. They all are geared to provide the support, what it requires to ensure that the strategy is developed. But also you need to bring on board the FID, the European Union, and other partners that will be able to provide the resources, because this is an endeavor that requires everyone to be on board if everyone has to be counted and no one is left behind. I think I'll leave it at there. Thank you so much, Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much. His name is Oliver J.M. Chingania. He's the Director, African Center for Statistics and Officer in charge of Technology, Climate Change and Natural Resource Management Division at the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. Thank you very much also to you, Mr. Director General of the NCRA. Now, like I mentioned earlier, the Ministry of Mines and Mineral Resources has temporarily suspended the licenses of Sierra Leone Mining Company, and they have cancelled the operations of the Tonkolili Iron Ore Shandong. So we have here in our midst this afternoon a team from the Ministry of Mines and, of course, the NMA, the National Minerals Agency. The Director General, Mr. Julius Mattai, is here. We have the Permanent Secretary from the Ministry and, of course, all the senior officials of the Ministry. So at this point, I'd like to invite Mr. Julius Mattai, the Director General of NMA, to please come up and make a statement whilst we get our questions ready after his statement.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for attending this press conference. I'm here standing in for my Minister of Mines and Mineral Resources, Honorable Fodorado Yoki, who should have been here to actually answer some of the questions and me providing some of the technical support or answering some of the technical questions. Unfortunately, he's been held up at a meeting in the State House, so he cannot be with us. But nonetheless, I'm more than ready and prepared, to give a background to some of the issues which I firmly believe you want to hear about, and I'll be more than willing to take questions from you later. I firmly believe that most of you are aware of the news that has been going on in local media as well as international media that the government of Sierra Leone has cancelled or suspended several licenses of major mining companies. I want to categorically state that that's not true. It's false. We've not cancelled the license of several major mining companies. Rather, on the 3rd of June, the Ministry of Mines, after consultation with the National Minerals Agency, we cancelled the mineral rights of Tonkolili Iron Ore Project and its associated African Port and Rail Services, which are operated by Shandong Steel and Iron Group. Then also on the 3rd of July, we temporarily suspended, I repeat, temporarily, for 21 days, the operations of SL Mining that has been operating at the Marampa Iron Ore Deposit. It's a fallacy that the government of Sierra Leone, especially the Ministry of Mines, is just going about cancelling license. But I want to provide context to the reasons we did that. It goes without saying that mining has been a major backbone of our economy. And I'm sure when we talk about Sierra Leone, the first that comes to mind, we are rich in mineral resources, gold, diamond, iron ore, rutile, bauxite, chromite, you name it. But the question that has always been elusive is, have we actually benefited from those? I firmly believe in 2013 and 15, before the Ebola struck in May of 2014, for most of you are here, the economy was doing extremely well, purely because the mining sector was contributing, significantly to the economy of this country. In 2013 and 14, it was almost 25, 27% respectively. And the export from iron ore, in terms of value, export was well over $1 billion. And the two companies I'm talking about today, if you actually take and put things in context, especially for Shandong that has been here, when mining started a full production late 2011, was doing extremely well. We are familiar with the African mineral story, how everything went pear-shaped on the 6th of March 2015, when ownership passed on to Shandong. But prior to 2015 and 2014, what the government got from these mining companies in terms of taxes and non-tax-related revenue was pretty impressive. 38 million, 23 million. And ever since, in the last few years, it's not anything to write about. The same thing, when we talk about Marampa, I don't know where we now have SL Mining. The last figures we got actually in terms of anything meaningful went from Timis, took ownership from London Mining in October 2015, and that was just about 4.5 million. But we know SL Mining basically is operating in that place now. They got their license on the 29th of March 2017 after we cancelled the Frank Timis mining license. It was cancelled on the 16th of March 2017, and within 2 weeks the license was allocated to SL Mining. Most of us are familiar with the fact that when we give a mineral right, there's also another process, the mining lease agreement we normally sign, and that's normally ratified by the parliamentarians. SL Mining got their license ratified on the 6th of December 2017, and most of you are familiar with the news that has been going around, that it was done late in the night, it was only brought there, and it was rubber stamped. And I encourage most Sierra Leoneans to visit our website, the NMA website. We have all the mining lease agreements. As my countrymen and women, I really plead with you, go and read some of these mining lease agreements and make up your mind and see whether as a country we are really benefiting from our mineral resources. And I will encourage you to put that in context. Please visit the NMA website, it's there. Actually, all the documents are there. When you read that agreement, you will see that SL Mining signed an agreement, a mining lease agreement with the government of Sierra Leone. But SL Mining is owned by Gerald Iron Ore Limited, which is a shell company sitting somewhere in British Virgin Island. Most of you have seen publications on the media, Gerald Group, Gerald Mattai, a very complex company. We've done our due diligence, and we are very familiar with that structure. For those of you who are here, a few weeks ago I did a PowerPoint presentation over an hour and a half. I really went through those details. Later, our Director of Communications from the National Minerals Agency will furnish you those materials. But as I mentioned, we have the Mines and Minerals Act of 2009 that basically guides our regulatory activities, and that's accompanied by the Mines and Minerals Operational Regulations of 2013. For us, that's our Bible, that's our Quran, and everything we do, we have to make sure it's in conformance with those Mines and Minerals Act. We've engaged SL Mining severally in terms of their obligations. You know, when you give you mineral rights, you have rights, and there are also obligations that do go with it. And we, as regulators, we are not just here to punish investors. Rather, we also have an obligation to protect and guide them accordingly. But after several engagements, if things are not going well, then we have to think. You know, our mission statement is quite clear, and our vision statement is to maximize the benefit from mineral resources for our countrymen, for us Sierra Leoneans. I, as the Director General of the National Minerals Agency, that responsibility falls squarely on my shoulders, together with my colleagues. And NMA, which is a professional wing, is actually answerable to the Ministry of Mines. So we ensure that we work in tandem. And of course, the other MDAs that do work with us, because in some areas there are synergies, overlaps, irrespective of the occasional duplications here and there, that does create, issues. When we suspended temporarily for 21 days, it was quite clear Section 52 of the Mines and Minerals Act were breached. And also, there were statements made by SL Mining during our engagement over a long period of time. We had engagement at the National Minerals Agency. I personally went to SL Mining together with my colleagues to visit the site. We spent some time. Being a specialist in iron ore geology, I was quite keen to see the entire operations to ensure they're in conformance with the Mines and Minerals Act provisions. And where there were shortfalls was actually to engage them and talk to them meaningfully. Without belaboring some of the technical issues. But the key thing here is we all get excited when iron ore is exported from this country because the government of Sierra Leone stands to get some royalties. You know, some monies do accrue to us. And for bulk commodities like iron ore, we get 3%. 3%. Let me just remind you, the government of Sierra Leone hasn't got a percentage share of any penny in any mining company in this country. So we rely on those royalties and other streams of revenues accruing to us, you know, from mining license fees, from penalties, from capital gains tax, income tax, you know, duty fees and all the rest. I'm sure most of you in June, specifically June 16th, 26th, and also July 7th, saw some of the videos on social media, you know, with various vessels, you know, taking iron ore out of the country. And I remembered the first one, we had a lot of people really say, oh, it's great to resume iron ore export, especially when you consider what's happened in Sierra Leone in 2014 and 15, you know, when we had the double shock of Ebola as well as the steep drop in the price of iron ore. So it was exciting, but we had to ask ourselves. I remember I asked so many people, do you know where they are shipping the iron ore to? Have you got any idea how much they're selling it for? And it beggars belief, I, as the Director General, didn't even know. It might look like we are not doing our job. I have my Director of Mines here, Mr. Peter Bangura. We invited SL Mining after several discussions. We knew they were ready to ship. I visited the site, saw stockpiles. Well, it made sense, and I think it's also respectful to the people of Sierra Leone, at least to tell us, according to the Mines and Minerals Act, we are supposed to have advanced pricing agreements who you are selling to, how much you are selling it for. At that time, the price of iron ore was really shooting up. You know, it was really exciting, thinking that yes, we'll engage people, at least our countrymen and women. I keep saying this, I have 7.1 million stakeholders, shareholders, and these are the people of Sierra Leone. Sadly, over 46% of them are under the age of 15, who have no clue about all these mining and geological things. But they know when their kids don't have food. They know when they need medicine. They know when their babies are crying. And it's for that reason we are here as National Minerals Agency to ensure we who are the technical experts actually faithfully and with all our body, soul, and spirit work on their behalf. So for a company to be exporting iron ore from this part of the world without us knowing where they're selling and who they're selling to was really a shame. After several engagements, we couldn't get anything from them. And there was very little option. We tried again. They started shipping. Shipped on the 16th of June. MV Cooper, nearly 55,000 tons. Then again on the 26th of June, they shipped again on Alcatraz or Triumph, vessels with funny names. The plan was to ship butane shipments, the first 5 using Supramax vessels. This normally take between 55 to 60,000 tons. Then after that, they ramp it up to 120,000 tons using Cape-size vessels. And it would have been a shame, a dishonor, and basically a painful event had we sat here as NMA and the Ministry of Mines to allow those commodities to leave this country without us really knowing who they're selling to. As much as we tried to engage SL Mining, their answer was, we are testing the market. But beggars believe that SL Mining has a parent company called Gerard Group that has several companies, Gerard Metal, Iron Ore, Gerard Metal Limited, and all the rest. They're actually specialists. They've been doing this for decades, selling on behalf. And let me just remind you, when London Mining went into administration in October 2014, later Frank Timis, most of you are aware of that name, who was one of the CEOs at AML, actually bought London Mining. The beggars believe as well. Initially, the receivers were priced at Cooper House. He deposited 3 million just to make sure he gets, and then another 3 million. I mean, the whole thing was, up to now, the figures are still disputable, for 10 million. And he inherited, of course, a debt of 230 million from the bankers led by Standard Chartered. Frank Timis, between October 2014 and March 2015, shipped a stockpile of 1.4 million tons, sold it for $46.5 million, for which the government of Sierra Leone got about 1.53 million. And he left a tax liability of over $6 million. That's how clever we are as a nation. And that's how caring we are. And in life, we all make mistakes, but if we don't learn from our mistakes collectively as a nation, I think that we have a serious crisis going ahead. And I think our children in the future will judge us not righteously. When you take that into context and you see a similar story happening, interestingly enough, when Frank Timis was doing those shipments, who was shipping on his behalf, it's the same SL Mining guys who were part of that cartel. Timis Mining Corporation was owned 75% by Gerard Metals or Gerard Group. So they did the shipment on behalf of Frank Timis. And Frank Timis, once he's finished everything in March 2015, that's it, stop operations. For those who are here again, I was fortunate to be at Radisson Blu at that time when I saw so many men and women, Sierra Leoneans, who invested so much of their money to provide services for Timis Mining Corporation. And they were left jobless, penniless, never paid them, especially those who had unsecured credits. So when I see things like that re-echoing, it bothers me. And it's still bothering me because I still see it. I still see the devil popping its head. Now, the same company, after Timis was cancelled, we took that same asset by law. Everything that was left there, the machines, movables and immovable ones, and so many things, according to the Act, we, as a government, you're supposed to issue a letter and asking them, for the register of the assets, which means we ask them, what do you want to take away? And what do you want to leave for care and maintenance? In which we are supposed to negotiate after Timis has left, so they will pay a reasonable compensation for those assets. Automatically, after negotiations and payment of those compensations, those assets should be ours. Normally, most other countries have used this as an equity, as a free carried interest. We didn't. Rather, SL Mining came and took over. We did evaluation by British firm DMT that came up to 16 million. It was disputable. It went to 19 million. As I'm talking, we've not received a penny from SL Mining for those assets. But they're using it to produce iron ore, Marampa Blue. So far, they've stockpiled over, or before the ban, over 700,000 tons. Not spent money on exploration, not spent money on drilling, blasting, or anything, rather than care and maintenance, and providing jobs for some Sierra Leoneans. I take my hat off to them. They're providing jobs for Sierra Leoneans. SL Mining itself employs over 650 people. Nearly 58 of them are experts, and they have also 7 contractors who are actually employing people, providing jobs for over 613 people. That's good, because we have job issues here. But at that time when we suspended, the price of iron ore was about $128 a ton, for which we are supposed to get 3% as a country. If you do your maths, at that time we have over nearly 700,000 tons. If you sell it at $128, it's roughly 90 million. And if we get 3%, that's 2.7 million as a nation. Divide that among 7, let's just do per capita. You do the maths, pittance. But that's what the loss is. And if you are not depressed by that, what rather SL Mining is doing was actually not selling, or what they wanted to account to us. We got documentation only after the suspension, after 21 days. They provided us a lot of documentation. We went through. After several calculations with my colleagues, we realized they're actually selling it at $80 to a sister company owned by them, which is illegal according to the Act, except if we have advanced pricing agreements. So at $80, it should have been, if they sell it, it will come up to 56 million. There's a difference between 90 and 56. And if they pay us a 3% royalty, we end up with 1.68 million. So again, we are losing another million. Just imagine, from 90 million, we get 2.8, and that's not enough. You know, let them squeeze us a bit more. And it's for those reasons we said, consistently they refuse to meet with us, to go through those papers, so that we calculate. The law clearly spells it. What should happen and what shouldn't happen when you're exporting. I got my colleagues, we sat around the table, and it saddens me because so far they've done 3 shipments, 177,000 tons, for which they've gained about $23 million, and for which we are supposed to get $680,000. But if we allow it to be sold at 80, we'll get 424,000. And we are, not that we've got it now, we are not getting it yet. I firmly believe that, of course, we are struggling as a nation, but our pride, our dignity, our intellect, we should not allow that people to come and belittle it. At least we know how to do the calculations. And it's for that reason we have the National Minerals Agency as a technical wing, working in tandem with the Ministry of Mines to ensure that as much as, yes, we are not there yet, but a group of individuals coming and not trying to abide by the law and doing things willy-nilly here and there, that's not acceptable. Maybe it would have been acceptable in the past, but not under my regime. Of course, I'm fully aware it's not only about technical issues or legal issues. There are other ramifications, economic, political, diplomatic, and other stuff. So I just want to put it quite clear on SL Mining. The temporary 21-day suspension elapsed over a week ago, but we stopped them from shipping further until we come back to the table, work out these figures according to the Act, have the advanced pricing agreement. They've been to my office on Monday, Tuesday. They gave us a lot of documents. Some of them do not make sense to us. Some of the explanations are still fuzzy, and we're asking them to provide all the documents. In terms of all the obligations, they're supposed to provide audited financial accounts. That's not happened. Again, for those who are interested in all the other details, I will encourage you to talk to the Ministry of Mines, and NMA will provide that. So far where we are, we encourage them to go back to operations, but without shipping. They are not happy with that. But I'm happy on behalf of my own people to say, go back to operations, provide jobs for those who are there, but let's speedily resolve these issues. Let's do calculations, have an advanced pricing agreement according to the law. When that's done, then you can go back and ship. So that's where we are with SL Mining. Any other further discussions on that? I'm more than happy later to take that. But also, with regards Shandong, and we all know again what happened. You know, when AML went into production in 2011, it was exciting. You know, the plans phase 1, phase 2 was great. As I said, in 2013, nearly 38 million. In 2014, nearly 24 million. That's what the government of Sierra Leone got in taxes and non-taxes in terms of revenue. But again, because of the Ebola and the sharp drop in prices, you know, they stopped production. Stopped their shares by December 2014. By the 6th of March, they had to go into administration. Shandong, who had 25% share, took over, inherited most of the liabilities, and took 100% over the company. And let me just remind you, as far as you have AML, there are 2 projects here, completely different. We have the iron ore project, Onkoli Iron Ore Project, a different company, then the African Port and Rail, that's responsible for the 200 kilometers from the mine site to Pepel. The government of Sierra Leone had 10% interest in that, and it was a lease for 99 years, or tied to the economic life of the mine. Shandong went into voluntary suspension of their operations in November 2017, voluntarily. And I'm sure some of you are aware, probably have friends or families who are laid off, some were never paid what was due. But again, we're also grateful Shandong poured over 1.5 billion into this country at that time to ensure the resuscitate the mine. But things have not gone according to plan. So they went into voluntary suspension of their own operations from November 2017, and normally after 24 months, which should have been this November, the government has the right to automatically cancel that. But no, they had a plan, was to liquidate. I mean, you know, we all know during liquidation, the only person who gains is the receiver. So the plan was to liquidate, free their directors and their shareholders from all liabilities, reincarnate themselves, and come back, buy the same assets from the receiver at a very cheaper rate. Again, history teaches us a lesson. The same thing happened at NDMC, for those who remember, Sierra Leone National Diamond Corporation. Went into receivership. Equipment that were worth millions were sold for just a few hundreds of dollars and bought by individuals. We had a mistake done from AML to Shandong, and we are not going to sit. And the law makes it quite clear. If you are being liquidated in the process of liquidation, you are not eligible for mineral rights. And then they were not even paying their license fees for 2 years. It's only after we terminated, then they went to pay. They had mine plan, financial models they are supposed to provide. They were not even providing, even after several calls. It's only after we terminated them, they went ahead. But it was not only that. There are so many several breaches. We had very little option. Had we allowed them to go into liquidation, that would have been the end. Rather, probably they would have been a different company there now, you know, buying everything at a very almost giveaway price. And then the people of Sierra Leone will be the losers yet again. You know, that axis has a history. Iron ore started in 1930. We had Delco there right up to 1975. They went into administration. The same trick which SL Mine is using, what they were using. An Australian company came, took over from 1981 to 85. They also went down. Until, African Minerals and Shandong came. So with Shandong, to me, the noise that we are unlawfully cancelling is not correct. And I will challenge anyone to read the act. Read it for yourself. If it's too legalistic, there's a guidance. There's a guide. It's 37 pages. It's clearly out there. But we'll leave that for the legal people to take that forward. Technically, I firmly believe, even morally and ethically, it's not right. I mean, we've been fooled for too long. You fool me once, shame on me. Fool me on you, fool me twice, shame on me. But we've been fooled severally, so we had to act. And it's not all doom and gloom. In the past, or since I took over in February, we've successfully issued 2 large-scale mining licenses. One in around Nimini, that was there for over 2 decades. People were just exploring. We gave a large-scale mining license for the first time. We have a large-scale gold mining operations in this country to a Chinese firm. There have been noise that, we cancel Mama and now we cancel Shandong, we hate the Chinese. It's not true. We just issued one. And we still have more applications being considered. April, we suspended Maya Mining Company for diamonds that were also not compliant. We suspended it for 21 days temporarily, extended it for another 21 days. A day like today, they are compliant and they've also got a large-scale mining license they just paid. So sometimes the stick works, not only the carrot. So we are also in the process, we are undertaking a nationwide airborne geophysical survey, 75% complete. I firmly believe where I stand as a geologist, I'm so optimistic. Every day I wake up, I'm thinking, wow. So far for 90 years, we've just been mining what the British left with us. That's all we know. They know deposits. But trust me, next year by April, May, we'll be seeing something different. There's going to be a lot of discoveries. I firmly believe that. So far, yes, there are anecdotal evidences, but it does not make sense if we just rely on those mineral resources and we allow our human resources to be abused, belittled, in a very undignified way. That's by belittling our intelligence. I firmly believe as Sierra Leoneans we are clever. It's not by fluke we had the first sub-Saharan West university in Sierra Leone. It's rather unfortunate things have gone a bit pear-shaped. So I'm very optimistic that yes, those minerals will not manage themselves, but as human beings, if we put our resources together, support each other, I think we manage our resources, Sierra Leone could be a paradise. Yes, we're cancelling those who are not conforming in terms of exploration license, but we are doing everything according to the law, and we are doing everything keeping in mind the 7.1 million shareholders, the population of Sierra Leone, with over 48% under the age of 15 according to the census. These are the voiceless. So thank you very much, and happy to take any other question.
As we now listen to waiting the Deputy Minister of Information and Communication, when Madam Amadi Gobe, as he give updates about government activities inside the press briefing, where the Ministry of Information and Communication can get every Thursday. And also inside the press briefing, we be get the Director General for the National Civil Registration Authority, where Mr. Mohamed M. Masakoy. And also we get the Director General for the National Mineral Agency, when Julius Mattai, where the self can give updates to the press. Well, as soon as self don't listen to waiting and say, now so this program go come to an end for today. Me wake out this program to una today. Me your name na Aisatu Smile Sise. So we will meet again to another edition of the Thursday press briefing, where the Ministry of Information and Communication can get every Thursday. Now the Ministry conference room. I say tata.